I am Josh Friedberg. I'm the CEO of USA Skateboarding, and I am really excited to be sitting up here today with some amazing people. Next to me, to my left, is Pierre Fratter-Bardy. He's the head of strategy and development for the Olympic Games. Next to him, Lucy Adams, the chair and elected director for Skateboard England, Skateboard GB. And Emma Frost, who is the head of communities and business for the London Legacy Development Corporation. And what we're going to talk about today is this idea of when a culture meets sport. What does that mean for skateboarding in an Olympic context? And how does skateboarding fit into the Olympic movement? Pierre, we're at a unique point in the history of skateboarding right now. This is before skateboarding goes to the Olympics. We're just shy of 14 months by one day that the Olympic Games are going to open in Tokyo. And there's been a path to get here. Why was skateboarding attractive to the IOC? And why are we seeing this approach to culture-based sports integrating a traditional sporting world?
Good afternoon, everybody. Well, we know that the sports program, the list of sports we have in the Olympic Games, should just represent the reality of what's happening out there. And today, if you go to any big city in the world, you will see some skateboarders. You will see some riders. Here it's a great example, but this is the case anywhere. Europe, America, Asia, Africa. Skateboarding is becoming mainstream. Skateboarding is very popular among youth. We see the participation of women growing. So for us, it became obvious that skateboarding had its place in the Olympic Games, and this is why we started to engage the discussion with the key players, the key actors in the skateboarding landscape, and the decision was taken in 2016 to introduce skateboarding for the first time next year in Tokyo in 2020.
Thank you. We're very excited to be in a place where the IOC understands the value of skateboarding, understands the value of the culture that surrounds skateboarding, because in Tokyo, the estimated audience for the Olympics in Tokyo is 5 billion people with a B. The vast majority of those people will have never seen skateboarding before, so they're going to see a competition on TV, and they're going to go, wow, that was really cool looking. Look at this sport. And if that's all you take away from your experience with skateboarding, you're missing most of it. As you can see what we have going on today with INNOSKATE, it is really a culture of invention, innovation, creativity, fun, music, art. You know, the heart of skateboarding is art. That brings me, I think, I want to talk to Lucy a little bit about, as a skateboarder and as someone who's integrating the skateboarding culture with the traditional sports federations in your country. Tell me what you think some of the risks and opportunities are for that in England.
Sure. I think we could talk in terms of the challenges that we faced, having to integrate something that isn't predominantly structured in the way that other roller sports are structured, was really difficult for us, because we were forced to join an existing federation that housed a whole bunch of sports that had rules, limitations, were played in boxes, on courts with referees, and obviously we don't fit that mould. And so the worrying thing for us is that we have to do what we do and try and get other people to understand it so that we can preserve what we have and not be forced into some kind of sausage machine of sport in order to access funding or whatever we need to do to get on. We don't want to have to fit the mold of what's already there, and that worries me and a lot of people, and that presents us with a real challenge. So it's really disheartening that we couldn't have been a bit stronger in a way that we didn't have to do this and have to take this route. And that concerns me. But we now have to be strong in that and try and maintain what we've got and show them what we've got, and I suppose go from within and build strength.
I think you bring up a really interesting point, because you talk about these sports that exist because of coaches and clubs and training, and they are very much in a box in terms of you're there to win, you have to do it just like this, and those are the rules. Skateboarding doesn't fit any of that criteria. Despite all of that, there are world-class skateboarders in an arena right across there that are competing to earn points for the first Olympic skateboarding qualifier ever. The reason that's happening is because of what skateboarding is. The sport part of skateboarding is a small part of it, and it's valuable to everyone here that enjoys it. Everyone can enjoy it in their own way. But I actually answered James Davis last night. He asked me this question. He's like, what do you think the risks are of skateboarding going into the Olympics? And when I thought about it last night, I was very much looking at it as from the perspective of an individual, whereas skateboarding to me won't be affected by what anyone else does. I woke up out of my sleep this morning going, I missed an opportunity to say something that I do believe is a risk. The risk in this is exactly what Lucy said. If skateboarders are not the ones making the decisions for skateboarding as it goes through this path, that presents a risk for the future of skateboarding. And I think it's an extremely valid point that we have to keep in mind as we move through this process. I have faith that we're headed in the right direction because my interactions with the IOC and what they believe about skateboarding, but it is still a battle in every country to make sure that skateboarders are the ones that are controlling their destiny as skateboarding moves to the Olympics. So thanks again for that question. Thanks again for bringing that up. Thank you, Pierre, for understanding how important those things are. Jeff and I were just talking for a second before this panel, and it crossed our mind that it was interesting that there's probably not another sport on the planet that would be concerned for their culture going into the Olympic Games. It's a really unique point that everybody knows that skateboarding in the Games is going to be great. There's a reason they want to see it happen there, but it's actually the people that are concerned about the culture that are here, that are doing things like this to educate and make sure that we're sharing that as we move forward. As we move forward, Emma, as you're involved with LLDC, London Legacy Development Corporation, tell us a little bit about what LLDC does and how you see skateboarding as a culture and an activity integrating into the future of Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park.
Sure. Well, just in terms of what LLDC does, we are the non-profit body responsible for the legacy from the 2012 Games, and we oversee the development, the social, the physical, and the economic development of this area as a result of hosting the Games in 2012. And one of the reasons that we think skating and skateboarding is so important as part of that legacy progression is essentially we're in the business of placemaking. We're building a whole new piece of city here. It's not that there was nothing here before, but we are radically transforming what was here before and how it connects to what was here before. And a big part of urban development, as all of you know, because you live and breathe kind of cities and being urban, as most of us do now across the world, a big part of it is placemaking. It's people that make places, not buildings. You know, buildings and landscapes just make spaces, but people are the difference between spaces and places. And actually, skateboarding, just as you said, Pierre, is an essential part of most cities' DNA now. You know, it's an innately urban movement. And that's something that we need to really understand and reflect when we're creating a whole new piece of city.
I'm sure that a lot of people here are excited to hear you share that information. And I think that these talks that we do and the things that we're doing here at INNOSKATE are part of opening these bigger conversations. And I know the conversations between the skateboarding community and LLDC are ongoing, and it's heartening to know that they're headed in the right direction. So, Pierre, back to you a little bit. Obviously, the legacy planning for the Games is hugely important when they're looking at sustainability and even who can host the Games in the future. Can you tell us a little bit about how Tokyo is thinking about legacy for skateboarding and beyond?
Well, before answering your question on skateboarding, I think on our side, when we award the Games to a city, the message is that we want the games to adapt to the city. And we want first to understand the long-term development plan of the city to see how the games will fit into that plan. And this is the starting point. It's not the city adapting to the games, it's the games adapting to a city. When you start from that perspective, then you start planning the competition, thinking of the next 20 years, and not only the 16 days of competition. So for the games to be successful for us, it goes well beyond the success of the 16 days. It's how much will you capitalize on this event to make the city a better place. Looking at skateboarding, we're in discussion with our friends in Tokyo, and what we know is that the park and the street, the two disciplines, the fields of play will stay. And this is essential. Because when we'll host the competition, when we'll go away, the games will be over. All the kids in Tokyo, they will have the opportunity to come and ride the park that the athletes had the occasion to ride during the Olympics. And this is pretty unique. We cannot do that in football, we cannot do that in tennis, but we can do that in skateboarding. So we have this guarantee that the two fields of play will stay. And the way we are thinking and developing the venues, we want to make it specific to skateboarding. Usually, we start with the field of play and we put 4 stands. In skateboarding, we said, well, maybe we don't need 4 stands. We could have 2, 3, and we could have a standing platform so that we bring spectators closer to the action. That's what we're going to do in Tokyo, very first time. We're not used to doing that in other sports. So development of the project, legacy, you said at the beginning just that skateboarding is unique. In the planning and delivering process, this is what we're trying to really respect, celebrate, so that we will be true to the DNA and to the core of what the sport is about.
I think that it deserves emphasis on this fact that the skateboarding park and street course in Tokyo are going to remain after the Olympic Games. And that is a huge step forward in the way this planning of skateboarding and skateboarding space works for the future. The adaptability part, we talk about it in the panel this morning with the Skating Spaces panel. Skateboarding has traditionally been this thing that adapts to whatever environment it's in. And it's interesting to see the reverse happening when it comes to the Olympics and to the IOC adapting to skateboarding. It's exciting. We talked a little bit about the risks, Lucy, that you see. What do you see as some of the opportunities for adaptability and inclusion for skateboarding moving forward because of this Olympic opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to enable us to have better access to funding for facilities, I think, is one of the biggest strong points. So in terms of getting our acts together with the likes of national governing bodies, it means we are able to have the conversations at the levels that we may not have had before in terms of government bodies and that sort of thing, and make relationships to plan for the future in a longer term. So it isn't just about putting the park in the ground and leaving it there. It's about that park and then what comes around that infrastructure around it and that park, and developing people and relationships to put that park there and that park there. But not only that, just to maybe then develop the community, so the shops and the people that actually help grow skateboarding and preserve our culture that you spoke about before. So if we didn't have Skateboard England or Skateboard GB, we wouldn't have maybe got to have the conversations with LLDC and the Mayor's office around things like skateable areas on this park. And actually, Long Live South Bank have done a massive job of having those conversations as well. And being organised groups like that really, really, really helps. But having a national governing body is something that then we are able to tap into a lot more. So that's really good for us.
That's great. I think it's interesting that you speak to what Emma said before about people. People are what make places alive. A skate park on its own is concrete. It's the people that use it and the people that frequent it. How do you plan to integrate, Emma, how do you plan to integrate different communities in an area like this as you do this massive development? Because there's plenty of different stakeholders, I'm sure, that want access and opportunity and involvement in that process. How does that work for you?
Yeah, you're right. It's a really complicated process, but a crucial one. And it's also one that we have to kind of respect and accept is going to take time. This sort of placemaking and place building is not going to happen overnight. In fact, it isn't even going to happen properly in like 10 years. We're probably looking at a trajectory more like 50 years. And having a little bit of patience and long-term vision to see that through is really required. I think another thing that's really required is the ability to properly engage and listen to multiple voices, and that's easy to say and hard to do, really hard to do. So a lot of the ways that we do it is ensuring, for example, with the skate community, a lot of familiar faces here today, we've only just started conversations, and there will be a long-term dialogue that will be needed to go through, but actually making sure that we really are connecting to as many different skate groups and representative bodies and sometimes unrepresentative bodies and youth workers and youth groups out there who only are on the fringes of the skate community but are really interested in how they can get more involved. They're the sort of ways that we galvanize a bit of a movement and ideas that we don't necessarily know about because we can't be tapped into every one idea or every one community. So it's about having very open dialogues with a focus, and actually sometimes having those government structures or having those authoritative bodies really do help because these are big picture changes and investments that we're talking about, but really being open to the discussion and involving people in that. We do a lot of long-term collaborative design process, collective curation, thinking about how we involve multiple different stakeholders. So just as an example, the park's won awards for being the most accessible public realm, and we've even set new inclusive design standards for the park. And actually in this building here, we're developing with UCL the first MSc in inclusive design. Now that's been really important because we set that long-term vision to be a really accessible and inclusive space and to design a piece of city that really responded to that. And it's relevant for skating because obviously there are a couple of key things that connect in terms of surface design, in terms of access points, thinking about like what's skatable and what's not, thinking about other users and what the conflicts might be when you're talking about streetscape or public realm. We need to balance all of those views, whether it's someone who's in a wheelchair, someone who's using a pushchair, someone who's on a skateboard, someone who's in a mobility scooter, like all of these different things need to be balanced. And that is a complicated process, but it can be done.
Absolutely. I think the long-term planning piece strikes me. As a skateboarder, I come from this world of, oh, that's a good idea, let's do it. And that is the very opposite of my experience for the 4 years that I've been involved with the Olympic skateboarding. Not that it's a bad thing, it's just entirely different. When you're planning things in 4-year blocks for the next 32, 48 years, it's a different way of thinking. I guess that what's encouraging to me in this long-term thinking is that we, as skateboarders, now have this opportunity of a much longer window than just Tokyo. Earlier this year, Paris announced that they wanted skateboarding in the Paris 2024 Olympics, and I would be willing to bet everything I own that we'll be in LA in 2028. So it's really nice for us and extremely nice for me to be able to think about skateboarding in this decade as opposed to we have to communicate everything we're trying to share about something that's so important to us in 14 months. Like, it's not possible. But these conversations, these interactions, the interactions that people are having because of the NGB structure that opens doors that we didn't have before, the opportunity that's being turned on in other countries where sport is fully funded by government, there's no other opportunity. Skateboarding's now on their list of things to do. So they're building skate parks in Turkey right now. They're building skate parks in Iran and in India, in places that you would not expect skateboarding to live. And at the end of the day, regardless of how those parks get built, what's going to happen is there's going to be more skateboarders because you just need access. So you're looking at the long term of the games. You're bringing in, Paris is bringing in breaking, which I think is a really interesting choice in terms of another culture-based sport. It's not something you'd ever go, oh, that's a sport. How does something like that get on the radar, and how does that play into your long-term thinking for the development of the Olympic Games?
We have a vision for the list of sport, the sports program, and that vision is about getting more urban, more useful, and more balanced. And with this in mind, we are monitoring the development of all sports practices, and we have a fabulous lab testing ground, which is the Youth Olympic Games. And the Youth Olympic Games are for athletes aged 15 to 18. It takes place every 4 years. And the last edition was last year in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And we had flagged breaking as one sport developing fast, being extremely popular, with a strong potential for development. So we said, okay, let's put breaking in Buenos Aires, and let's see how it's going to perform. To organize breaking, we didn't create and didn't build any venue. We used the field of play of 3-on-3 basketball. So in terms of cost, close to zero. In terms of popularity, very, very high. Everybody loved it. And we're very surprised to see athletes, they call themselves B-boys and B-girls, coming from all countries, all continents. Extremely popular, very universal. Very strong level in both men's and women's competition. So when we debriefed that event, we realized that breaking was among the most successful disciplines, very followed online, and we engaged discussion with our friends from Paris 2024. Well, it became obvious that if we want to really make a difference and reach out to a new audience, breaking was ticking all boxes. So breaking does not cost much. Breaking brings a lot of different benefits, allows us to reach out to a new audience, allows us to make the sport and the games more urban, more youth-oriented. So this is why Paris 2024 came with this proposal, along with skateboarding, surfing, and sports climbing.
It's exciting. It's exciting to see this evolution happening, and I think that this is, at the end of the day, everyone's very concerned with how the Olympics are going to affect skateboarding. I actually think that it's going to be the opposite. I believe that the skateboarding is going to have a huge effect on the Olympic movement as we move forward, even if it's just as a template for integrating a culture-based sport, where you have to respect the people that built that sport outside of the traditional sporting environment. For skateboarding to continue to flourish here in England, what do you see needing to happen, Lucy?
That's really big. It's doing all right. It really is. We've got loads of stuff happening. We've got parks coming up all over the place, and I guess it's really about, as Skateboard England, the governing body, and our work, what we have aims to do is help people skate more and skate better. And so whatever we can do, and I think we are focusing in on facilities for sure, and ensuring that what's getting built is to a really high standard, and ensuring that we don't have playground pop-ups and modular stuff that's picked from a catalogue, because that is still happening. So we want to ride that out, but we want to support groups and those people that are helping, again, to improve, increase participation, because we're all seeing it. The shops are shutting down, they're struggling. Indoor skate parks are finding it difficult to pay rent and stay open. So those groups that are trying to build skateable spaces, DIY spots, we need to help them. We need to help them make skateboarding more accessible in a free realm.
I think that speaks to the evolution of skateboarding's place in society in general. You know,
Yeah.
we're moving to this very mainstream moment for skateboarding.
Yeah.
We're going to the Olympic Games.
We're part of the circus, so we got to use it to the best we can, and so that's what we're going to do. We have conversations with the British Olympic Association, and we're getting more people to understand, like you said, that it's way more than going to Street League and being in the box and going for 45 seconds. And that's really positive.
That's great. The opportunity, as we see it, is that the Olympics are going to bring all this attention to skateboarding in a really interesting way. We're having these conversations more and more with people who don't have anything to do with skateboarding, but skateboarding is beginning to affect their lives. And what we want people to take away from INNOSKATE and some of these other opportunities is this idea that you can have this dialogue and to give people on both sides of that fence, whether you understand skateboarding, you're a skateboarder, or you don't. To Emma's point about the conversations, those are the most important thing. The conversations we have today, tomorrow, after Tokyo about skateboarding will be what propel our culture and the sport of skateboarding forward. And working together, we can all do that in the right way. So I would just want to thank you all very much for being up here and sharing your experience today. And I think I would actually want to see if we can take a question or two. We haven't done that on either of the panels, but I think it's worthwhile with you guys up here. So does anybody have a question? Who wants to be first? Arthur. Excellent.
So it occurs to me that a bit of a historical analogy is what happened with snowboarding and the Olympics. So I wonder if any of you could comment. That's a group of people who had a kind of culture around creativity, individual expression, and yet it then turned into a high-money sport, elite athletes building their own places to practice far away from everyone else. And it feels like it perhaps changed some of the dynamics, or maybe it didn't. So I'm just curious about your perspective on that.
Yeah, it's an interesting parallel that you're drawing. We've studied a lot the snowboarding model, and we learned from what happened. Before introducing skateboarding in the games, we traveled the world and we really went to all the major events, met all the key players to understand first what was at stake, and second, what was the feeling of the skateboarding community. We went to the X Games in Munich and Oslo, we went to the Street League in New Jersey, we went to Vans Park Series, we went to the Barracks, we went to the event in South Africa, in Nanjing, China. And what we realized is that, you know, when we say skateboarding is different, yes, but skateboarders, they are top-level athletes, really. And when you talk to any top-level athlete, the dream, the ultimate competition, regardless of what your sport is, it's the games. And all the top athletes told us, I would dream to wear the jacket of my country and come and compete at the games. So what we felt there, compared to 20, 25 years ago for snowboarding, is that there was a generational shift. 25 years ago, the pro snowboarders said, well, you know, not interested. It's not for us. But we put snowboarding, so it took time. 25 years after, all the top riders, they told us, yes, we really want to be part of it. So we believe the journey will be slightly different, because from the beginning, we have the commitment from the top-level athletes that they want to be part of it. So hopefully, the process will be smoother. Now, I think the key will be to protect the interest of skateboarding. And when we say skateboarding for skateboarders and by skateboarders, this is crucial, really. So that's what we have to protect.
Can I just, thanks. I think that's really important. But I think there's a danger, and I've heard from some British snowboarders and people involved in the industry that actually what happened as well is that the circuit of snowboarding events was really huge and it was everywhere and everybody really enjoyed going to all these independent snowboarding events. But as the circuit got tighter and more about Olympic qualification, money from brands, corporates, whatever, was ploughed into those competitions, and it squeezed the brands for everything they had. So people were looking to do more local jams, events that had been happening for years and years and years, and it was harder and harder for those people to run those events. So I think we need to take some learning, and not just that, but it's a crucial one, that we still need to support the grassroots and not make it all about this one big thing that happens every 4 years, because all this other skateboarding is going on, and that is equally as important, if not more important, as you said. So everybody should be mindful to that.
Can I just add to that as well? Because obviously I'm speaking as a complete outsider. I don't skateboard. But one thing I've really seen from the years that we've been involved with skateboarding is the outreach capacity. And I think in a kind of simplistic way, that's the beauty of what skateboarding has at this very moment. It's a massive generalization to say, but loads of sports that have made it to the Olympics really struggle with a talent pipeline. Skating doesn't do that. Skating's got it coming literally up from the streets. You've got 30 million skaters around the world right now, haven't you? Like, you don't have a problem with your talent pipeline. How you access it, how you harness it, how you support it, how you ensure there's enough like accessible urban realm to develop that, definitely. But the talent and the interest and the passion is there. So it's about accessing that, supporting that, recognizing that, not trying to change it, just harnessing it, keeping it really inclusive, keeping it really grassroots, and respecting the outreach, respecting the streets and where it's all come from, but still taking that momentous kind of Olympic vision and ambition that you can offer with the structure of the Olympic Games.
Absolutely. It is an opportunity to focus on the things that are important to our culture and allow us to continue to grow. To Lucy's point, to Pierre's understanding, to your understanding of what we're talking about today, it just goes back to these conversations. That's it. As long as we continue talking about the right way to integrate skateboarding, not just the sport, but the culture, into the future of the games and the legacy that it leaves behind, the world becomes a better place. And I'm excited to see that happen. So thank you all very much. Thanks for the question.